Hello and welcome to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. I'm Swebb,
And I'm Dad.
and we are the dad and daughter duo talking about all of our favorite sports past few weeks. Dad, what is up?
Not much, Sweb. How you doing?
I am I'm okay. It took me a week to get over the Yankees losing the World Series, but I'm gonna be all right.
I'm glad you're going to be all right.
It wasn't easy, um, but I've come to terms with reality.
Listen, Sweb, they played sloppy baseball all year long. They were just better than just about everybody that they played, except for the Dodgers, and it caught up to them. It's
Well,
as simple as that. Now, just remember this. Last year, they won 82 games, didn't make the playoffs. Then they made major improvements to their team this past winter, and they wind up and they make it all the way to the fifth game of the World Series. What they have to do now is continue to make improvements, and they'll probably be on top. The Dodgers, the previous 2 years, won their division by like 20 games each year. One year over 20 games, one year a little bit under 20 games. And then they lost in the first round of the playoffs, both
okay,
years.
so we're jumping straight into the Yankees. No pleasantries, no what's new, what's going on. We've jumped straight into the Yankees.
What,
So yeah,
you started talking about the
yeah,
Yankees.
but you just wanted to
Okay,
get
Smith.
right into the X's and O's.
What?
So let's do it. Yes, the Yankees played like garbage during the World Series, and quite frankly, during the postseason. And by garbage, I mean terrible base running, defensive errors, not hitting in key moments with runners on base. And ultimately, that caught up to them. Now, they didn't do anything differently than they did the first two rounds. It just so happened that the teams that they were playing were making a lot of the same mistakes. But yes, the Dodgers were a better team. You also throw in the fact that the starting rotation could barely go 4 to 5 innings a game, puts a lot of extra pressure on the bullpen. And ultimately, we kind of fade out of the World Series in 5 games against the Dodgers. I think the thing that really is tough to swallow, the thing that hurts is like they do just enough to give you hope, like leading the game in game 1. Um, Nestor Cortez comes up, gives up a game winning grand slam. Like they do just enough to find a way to be leading the game. And then next thing you know, your heart's pulled out of your chest because of some terrible fifth inning in game 5 where they weren't playing defense, or the bullpen, who had been so solid throughout the playoffs, gives up a run. But it's also like their arms are falling off. So, yes, I've come to terms with it. It wasn't fun, though. It was not fun.
Sweb, I've seen my first World Series that I can remember was 1961. Yankees won in 61, 62, 77, 78, 96, 98, 99, 2000, 2009. I think that might be more World Series in my lifetime. Not even well, my lifetime was a few years prior to 61. But I've seen more World Series than I believe any wins, World Series wins, than I think any other team in Major League Baseball has won. I think the Dodgers have won 8, maybe 9 now. So that's how it goes, Sweb.
Well, you know what it is? And I'm not even speaking from experience here, but when you watch the rom coms and some of those teenage shows, those angsty shows back in the day that were on CW, it's like a terribly toxic relationship. You're dating this guy, and he takes you out for a nice dinner, buys you dinner, gets you flowers, and then the next day he doesn't call, or the next day he's talking to some other girl, and then the weekend comes around and he calls you again and he says, "Hey, what are you up to?" And so you keep going back because you still remember that first dinner that you had where you had an amazing meal and he bought you your favorite flowers. Um, and then the next thing you know, you realize he was no good, but it's too late, right? Like your heart's already broken, you've cried endlessly, and that was essentially the Yankees all season, but especially in the postseason. You have those good games where you're like, yes, he's the one. He is the one. And then the ninth inning rolls around, or
The
the
fifth
bottom of
inning.
the 10th, or the fifth inning in game five, and you realize that he in fact was not the one. But
That's why you have to keep shopping for a better dude. Then you don't have these problems.
so, it actually took me a little bit less time to get over this World Series loss than the one in 2001 and 2003 because they just didn't play well, and the Dodgers were the better team. But it's like "Quit Playing Games with My Heart," which is an old Backstreet Boys song. Um, they played with my heart all year. Saw one too many runners get thrown out at third.
Or
Um,
at home. At
at
home.
home, at home. That's what I meant. And it just some sloppy. They just lack the fundamentals. I think that's the thing that's really frustrating too. And let's talk about what you'd like to see out of this team. Because for me, I know we talk about not managing from the couch. Um, and you hate to see a manager be let go after your team gets to the World Series for the first time in 15 years. But, and there's plenty of blame to go around as well. But the thing that I guess is the most frustrating, and I think the collective theme of this team was that they didn't do the basic things right. They didn't do the key things that you need to do to be a winning team, to be a successful team right throughout the course of the season. You can't always rely on the big homers. We had plenty of those that, resurrected us from the dead, but the poor defensive plays, the terrible base running, the lack of situational hitting, and I just don't know who else to put that on besides the manager. It's like a team in football, and you all know I've been a Miami Hurricane for many years, and they notoriously are a team that has a ton of penalties. Even this year with the Jets, we've talked about it's hard to win games when you have a whole bunch of penalties, right? They're they're a team that is sloppy, does a lot of boneheaded plays, and it results in potentially losses. And so I equate this team with a lot of that sloppy play to a football team that ends up causing too many penalties and collecting too many penalties during a game. And I just don't know who else to put that on besides the coaches.
Some of that sloppy base running you're talking about is a crazy amount of players getting thrown out at home plate. Most of that, 95% of that, is on the third base coach. Okay. He was sending runners where you could sit there on your couch looking. You said, this guy's not going to make, he's going to get thrown out. That's on the third base coach. Okay. As far as Boone is concerned, see, everything has changed in Major League Baseball now. Because baseball is a 6 month sport, and if you include exhibition season, which is another a month and a half spring training, you're with these guys every day for like 7.5 months. And if you get into the playoffs, that's another month. So you're to 8.5 months. You got to be able to handle these guys, keep them positive, because baseball's a game of failure. If you get up 10 times and you get 3 hits, you're a great player, but you've made out 7 times. There's a lot of stuff to handle. Boone is excellent at that. He gets along with the guys, he handles them.
He's a
It's
player's
not like it
manager.
was
I agree with that. But what I
in
will say
baseball,
is
that's very important.
that is very important. And it's important in any sport, but there also has
Yeah.
to be discipline, right? You look at Tom Thibodeau of the Knicks. He is notoriously a very tough coach. He expects a lot of it out of his players. His players still like him, right? They still love him. They know that that's what he's going to get. You can't be too lax to the point where guys can't even do like some of the basic things right. And that's my problem. I like Aaron Boone. I'm not sure that there's a better replacement. Yeah, I haven't thought that far ahead, but you watch these games and it was like game after game. And some of that happened during the regular season, right? There were periods of time where a player like Gleyber Torres just didn't run out of the box after he hit the ball, or made a lot of boneheaded plays in the field, and he wasn't even the problem during the postseason. He actually played really well, hit really well. So that could be a testament, right, to Aaron Boone lifting his players up. I liked that he continued to support Judge even though he was having the roughest postseason possible. But there also has to be some discipline and some accountability. Like if this team comes back and a lot of these pieces come back, but they continue to not be able to execute, then you're in the same situation that you were this year. We were texting back and forth about it throughout the postseason. Execution, they lack that from pretty much the first inning of every game that a starter was on the mound to the ninth, sometimes the 10th. So that's the tough part is like, what moves do you make here? How do you change that? How do you get better?
Well, they're not gonna have the same team because some guys aren't gonna be back. Gleyber Torres made like 14, $15 million this year. He's gonna be a free agent. I'd be shocked. They're not gonna bring him back for financial reasons more than anything. Jazz Chisholm, they picked up during the season. They traded for him. He played pretty well at third base, but his real position is second base. He only makes like $4 or $5 million only. Listen to me.
That's nothing in today's
That's
economy.
that's nothing in today's game. But so he's going to probably be switched to second base, and then they're going to probably be on the lookout to sign a third baseman or trade for one.
They also
But
need to get a first baseman because they've declined the contract of Anthony Rizzo. They decided not to pick up his final year, which um, great team guy, but I think lacked in a lot of areas, was a bit underwhelming at the plate. Defensively, I know he was playing with broken fingers in the postseason, but was a bit of a liability in the field, which is unlike him because he is a Gold Glove winner.
right, and he was set to make $17 million next year. So they took his buyout, which was only $6 million, and now he's a free agent.
And the big piece is they have to sign Juan Soto. Um,
Right.
that
That
that's
is
that's the big piece. I'd hate to think of him leaving the Yankees. He looked like he was having the time of his life all season. His dad even looked like he was having the time of his life. His whole family looked like they're Yankees through and through. Um, but he's going to get offers from. He's already gotten an offer from LA. I think the Mets. I'm sure there'll be some others because he is what 25,
he's
and
20. He just turned 26 last week.
just turned 26, and he's a generational player. Like we saw that throughout the season and in the postseason, just the way. And I think the way that he played throughout the season from April, taking pitches, getting on base, like the way that he plays, actually, I think changed the culture of the lineup, changed the trajectory of the lineup, the typical strike out or hit a home run to no, get on base. You can get on base and then let the next guy hit the homer or let the next guy get a hit. And now you've got a bunch of guys on base and now you can do some things. So, just the fact that he walks as much as he does, he is smart at bats. I mean, I'm still gonna be thinking about that at bat against the Cleveland Guardians and the ALCS of just battling the tough pitches off and then hitting the game winning homer. Um, we need him. I think that goes without saying. But what other pieces? There's also been talk today, Monday night, that Garrett Cole has taken his contract, accepted the terms of his contract, which is 4 years, $144 million left on his contract, and there's talks about an extension. So they picked up Luke Weaver. That's the steal of the century. I think he's making about $2 to $3 million a year. So they've picked up that option. But what other moves do you want to see them make? Because they're going to need a first baseman, and it sounds like a third baseman.
Well, Verdugo, the left fielder, is a free agent. They're going to probably let him go because he makes like $9 million, and they have Jason Dominguez, young player, 21 years old, 22 years old. He'll probably move into the outfield. They'll probably move Judge to left field, and Dominguez is really a center fielder, and they'll let Dominguez play center field. He has to work on his defense. He can hit, he can run, he can throw. He's going to have to work on his defense a lot.
And I know a
Um,
lot of people in the media and people who have been watching the team all season have said there were a lot of guys that were playing out of position this year. Judge is a right fielder. Um, Dominguez, when he played at the end of the season, he was in left field and struggled there because he's not a left fielder. You mentioned Jazz Chisholm playing third. So there are a lot of guys playing out of position. All in all, great season, right? I don't think anyone expected for us to be going to the World Series. You just hate to see the way that it happened, especially that fifth inning, because I felt like the guys that you don't want to give up a 5-run lead in the World Series. You don't want to do it any time, but certainly not in the World Series. But you started to see like the confidence come back, the swag come back. Aaron Judge was you could start to see some life come back into his bat. Um, and then it all went away with just terrible, terrible defense.
they blew it, and if they had won that game, the Dodgers would have been on so much pressure coming back 2 nights later in Los Angeles to try to win. So, but that's how it goes.
And I don't want to see Freddie Freeman and his veneers until next year. I'm gonna have nightmares.
This is why
Um,
the Yankees were trying to sign him 2 years ago.
he's a great player. I have nothing but respect for him, but I don't want to see him and his chiclets for a while.
He's got some pretty big chiclets.
Does they, these dentists when they give these people these fake teeth, you can't go with like the fluorescent white color. You got to go to few shades down to like off white, because it'll still look really white. But if you go with the fluorescent, like, hey, if we're playing laser tag in a dark room and you can see my teeth, that's not the color you need. You actually need like the white to off white.
Yeah, that's what.
I mean, it's like this guy can brighten up a dark room. Daylight savings time. I walk out of my office today. It's dark. If Freddie Freeman were around, it would feel like daytime. But
Oh
I
boy!
mentioned this the last time we recorded. The key is to root for a team in every sport. So you can just turn the page. Okay.
Right, it's time to turn the page.
Yep. It's basketball season. It's hockey season. Hey, the Jets even had a win last week.
Mm.
Um, Miami Hurricanes are number 4 in the nation.
North
So
Carolina has the first game tonight.
college basketball starting Monday night. So there's a lot to be excited about. Let's talk about the Knicks because they started off the season terrible game against the Celtics in Boston. Defense didn't realize that the season had started. But they're now 3-2. They play Monday night against Houston, and they have a bunch of games this week. Then they go to Atlanta. Then they're back at home. They play Milwaukee and they play Indiana over the weekend. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of this rotation, Dad. What are your thoughts on the Knicks?
They're starting to look better. The chemistry is starting to develop. Their bench is very thin with experienced players, but that's a conversation for another day. Boston, they were outclassed. They lost a close one to Cleveland, who's I believe 7-0. I think they're only undefeated. No, and Oklahoma City is undefeated also. But they're starting to play better, and they're starting to look more like a team. We'll see what happens.
Now, there, when we talk about the starters, all five starters are averaging 13 points or more on the season. Jalen
Right.
Brunson's leading the way with 25 points. Karl Anthony Towns, 22 points a game. Mikal Bridges, 17.6. I think that's been a big thing. He looked like his shot was off that first game, and he's come alive. He's now averaging, uh, he's about 39% from the 3 point line. You have Josh Hart at 14 points, and then OG Anunoby at 13. And then you've got Miles McBride coming off the bench at 13 points a game as well. So this, when the starters are on the court, the way that the offense is moving, the way that the ball is moving, not a lot of dribble, lots of passing and facilitating, and guys hitting shots. Um, I like what I see. I think Boston's going to continue to be very difficult. We'll see how the Knicks fare this week against teams like Milwaukee, and they've already blown out Indiana, but Indiana's always a tough team. The chemistry, though, that was your concern, and so far, it's looking good.
It's starting to get better. It's starting to get better. As they play better teams, we'll see how it looks against the better teams. They looked great against Detroit the other night, but Detroit's not a good team. Very quietly, they're starting this. He's trying to develop some of these younger players coming off the bench. Sims is improved. He's stronger. He's bigger, um, and he's improved. Um, Kolick, the second round draft pick, he's going to be getting a little more playing time. Campaign is going to be getting some more. He's been playing pretty decently. So they're starting to develop because the key for their team is going to be developing a bench. So if there's an injury, you have somebody who can step in and take the place, and you don't see a big drop off.
And the Knicks rounded out their roster on Monday with Ariel Hookporty, signing him to a 2-year deal, and they're still finalizing a contract with Matt Ryan, which could be a two-way contract, or I think can't be a two-way contract to shore up the 14-man roster. But the details of that haven't been finalized as of Monday night. So,
And he's a good shooter. And he's from New York. He went to Iona Prep up in New
right.
Rochelle.
And the thing that I like too is oftentimes when there are injuries, and the Knicks saw many of them last year, it gives guys the chance to step up. So you have players like Jericho Sims getting more playing time. Huck Porty seems very athletic. He hasn't been on the court that much, but he's a 7-footer who with a lot of athleticism. It's not a guy who's dribbling off his feet. So um, this, with Mitch being out until probably January or so, there's an opportunity for these guys to develop more. And I think the name of the game is always that you have to stay healthy. But they certainly have a ton of guards and a team that can shoot.
Yep, they have a lot of good shooters. And signing that guy Ryan, he's another real good shooter. And they're starting to develop some of these younger kids on the bench, and they're getting a little bit of playing time. And as the season rolls on, they're going to probably get a lot better. So we'll see what happens. Things could work out well.
Yeah, they could. I think they will. The season, it's a long season. So anything that's happening now virtually doesn't matter come March. But I like what I'm seeing. I think the chemistry is more instantaneous than I think anyone could have hoped for,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
good.
Things are moving along nicely, Swebb.
So let's talk the Jets. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. After the Yankees lost in the World Series, um, I didn't really want the aggravation of watching a Jets game. The previous week, I was flying back from Miami and I watched the game on the TV. And the next thing I know, I'm screaming at the TV because they're missing field goals and losing to, at the time, a 1-5 New England Patriots team. And then both teams end up being 2-6. And I was just like, why did I even watch that? I should have just gone to sleep. So this past week, with the Yankees losing, I didn't want that kind of negative energy in my household. I came home, I saw that the game was on. It was probably like I got home
That
at
was
like
Thursday
8:40.
night.
Yeah, it was like 8:45, so I could have watched the whole thing. And I said, "You know what? No. I'm going to bed."
8:45.
I laid in bed and watched TV on my computer, but I did not watch the game. And I didn't even think twice. And I woke up the next morning and said, "Oh, the Jets won against a good Houston Texans team."
Swebb, how many times do I have to tell you? You can't do that. You gotta stick with your team, Swebb,
I
through
think there were
thick and thin.
extenuating circumstances when your team loses the way that the Yankees did in game 5 of the World Series. I think sometimes you just got to take a break. You just need to do like a complete refresh, detox, get all the negative energy out. And you don't want to put yourself in situations where things can still be negative. So but they won, and
Yes, they did. They played a good game too.
they went with a different kicker,
Yep.
and there were no missed field goals or extra points.
Listen, they've only gotten blown out of one game this year. That San Francisco game. Other than that, every game is nip and tuck. And if you look at the NFL throughout, no matter who's playing, most of these games come down to the last few minutes of the game, maybe sometime the last play of the game. The Jets have lost 3 games because of a bad field goal kicker. If they had won those, they're 3-6 right now. If they had won those 3 games, and last year this kicker was excellent, but it's a new year. They could be 6-3 right now, totally reversed, riding high, right behind Buffalo. But it's because of they lost 3 games directly because of the field goal kicker.
And even at 3-6, they still have a shot to get to
Yeah,
the
but
playoffs
they
because
got to kind of run the table. They
the
got to.
division isn't great. Um, but I'm hoping it's not a situation like we talked about with the Yankees where you're dating the wrong dude because I, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. So I'm taking it week by week with the Jets. But in positive news, college basketball starts tonight.
Yes.
Dad, I'm sure you're excited.
Yep, I am. 9 p.m. ACC Network. Caroline against Elon.
They should handily win that game. I'm looking forward to seeing the team. I haven't paid attention too much to the guys who have come in, uh, transferred in, freshmen, all of that. They've had some exhibition games. Haven't paid too much attention to it, so I'm excited to turn the page to some college basketball. And speaking of college football, I know your pages have already turned with the Michigan Wolverines being 4-4, but my Miami Hurricanes are 4-0. Or I'm sorry, are number 4 in the country, and they are 9-0. So things are looking good. 2 weeks ago, I was in Miami for homecoming. It was amazing. Got to see some old teammates, some former teammates, some people that I hadn't seen in, gosh, like 14, 15 years. And also got to walk on campus. And some things are the same just as I left them a long time ago, and some things are new. Campus is still beautiful. It felt so good to be back. Um, the game was incredible. The atmosphere, it was loud. It was fun to see a packed stadium. They did a black the players were wearing all black uniforms. They did an orange out in the stadium. It was just great. Of course, it was also game 2 of the World Series, and I after the loss that the Yankees had endured the night before, I had my phone on my lap and I was watching the game on my phone, which ended up being pretty much a waste of time because they didn't hit until like the ninth inning. But um, Miami, they played Georgia Tech this upcoming weekend. Michigan plays Indiana, who's 8 in the
Mm.
country. Um, Miami is now in a position to get to the ACC championship, obviously, but with the loss that Clemson had this past weekend, who I thought would have been who Miami would potentially play, I haven't watched too many SMU games. It looks like that could potentially be their matchup, but they've certainly put themselves in a position to get to the college football playoffs and have a first round bye.
Let me tell you, I watched that whole Miami game Saturday. They have some offense. Their quarterback is tremendous. However, their defense,
Their
I don't
defense
know
is
if you could,
porous.
I don't know if you could win a championship with a defense like that.
You
Their
definitely
defense is
cannot.
very spotty.
It's
They have to outscore teams. That's why they score 50, 60 points so many times. The
right.
other team scores 30 something or 40 something.
You certainly don't want to be having trouble against teams like Duke. Um, the defense is a bit like Swiss cheese, but hey, when you have a good quarterback and some great running backs, some great receivers, a good tight end, you can go a long way in college football. So, I'm not singing national championship level expectations. I'm just happy to see a really, really good Miami team for the first time in a very long time. I think it also helps with future seasons, right? You start to see all these recruits. Florida State is awful. Florida is not much better. So now in the state of Florida, you have all these recruits that either grew up in Florida and want to stay home, or other recruits from these southern states that want to come to a school in Florida. Really, your only option right now to have a great team or to play on a great team is Miami. Now,
And your coach is a tremendous recruiter.
coach is tremendous. Certainly, NIL plays a huge part in a lot of the movement for all of these teams. Obviously, Cam Ward, this is his last season in college football, and he is a generational talent. But uh, when you have a really good football team, or in college sports, when you have a good team in general, uh, it allows for future success because of the fact that recruits now want to come there. They come to a game and they see the excitement, they see the atmosphere, and they want to be a part of that. So I'm feeling really good. Dad, is there anything else besides college basketball that you are looking forward to this upcoming week?
Well, more Nick games. College basketball. I love I love college football and college basketball. Shanae got everything going. Carolina goes to Kansas. I don't know who'll schedule that game. They play at Kansas on Friday night. Kansas is ranked number one in the country going into the season.
That is going to be a tough one. Kansas is always a tough team. I'm excited. This week, I think I'm going to start changing things over for Christmas. So I'm going to start putting up the Christmas decorations. Um, I have a little bit left to go on my pumpkin candle, and then we're switching over to the pine candle. So this week, I think if I have the time, I'm going to start to decorate for Christmas. So next week, you might see some Christmas decor in the background. Ho,
Wait a
ho,
second.
ho.
It's not even Thanksgiving yet.
That's okay.
You're talking about Christmas already?
I listened to my Christmas playlist yesterday and it felt good. Felt great. And I will
You
continue to listen to it. I've got a bunch of different playlists. If anyone wants access to those playlists so you can listen to them yourselves, I got you. Because I got a classic, cozy Christmas that I usually play while I'm going to sleep. It's more jazzy, like coffee shop type. Then I've got my classics like Nat King Cole, Bing Crosby, the traditional singers. And then I've got Everything Christmas, which I think has about 500 songs on it. You've got some Mariah Carey in there, one of the best Christmas albums around. Um, Justin Bieber even had a great Christmas album. Michael Bublé, you name it. So I think it's time. I think it's time.
Keep me posted on that. You got any pictures of the Miami campus?
Yeah, I'll show you guys some pictures. Here's the pool. There's also a huge lake on campus, which is beautiful, right next to the pool. We also had some construction taking place, so that kind of messed up some of the pictures. But um, I'll do this is a full pan of the student center, the lake, the pool, and I'll also drop in a picture of the football game. So, Dad, before we leave for the
Mm-hmm.
night, do you want to share a tip of the week. You don't have one.
Oh, I do have one.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. When Swebb starts telling you on November 4th about putting up Christmas decorations, don't listen to her. When Swebb starts telling you about, because you know what's coming next, shopping will start.
Oh, the shopping never ended. In order for something to start, it has to have ended. So if it's just continuous, then you don't have to worry about it starting. The shopping
Oh,
has
man.
been going on. I'm actually making some returns, and I'm not even going to exchange. I have a few pairs of jeans that I wanted to try, this new cut that all the kids are wearing these days. I didn't like it.
Kids Swebb?
The 20 somethings.
The 20-somethings Kids
I
Swebb?
didn't like the cut, so they're going back, and I'm not exchanging for something else. I'm just going to get a full refund. And I think you'll like my shopping when you're opening gifts on Christmas Day. Never
Oh,
seen you turn down a present.
oh, that kind of shopping. Oh,
Oh,
okay. Go
uh-huh.
ahead, shop.
Yeah. So, my tip will be it's never too early to start celebrating Christmas, start listening to the music. And if you're dating a terrible guy who sometimes is nice and sometimes pays for dinner and then starts talking to the other girl, don't waste your time.
That's good. That's good advice, Swebb. That's good advice.
All right. Well, that concludes this week of Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X, and subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, and share this episode with a friend. We will see you next week.
So long.
Thank you for tuning into Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, the show where we cover all of our favorite sports moments from the past week. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, and follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X. See you next week.